welcome vintage Hollywood archive. The tall, curvaceous blonde Anne Francis, with a little mole next to her mouth, was the one who played the role that broke down gender barriers. The only woman in the cast of Forbidden Planet who had a lively charm and had a wide-eyed, childlike innocence will always be remembered as Altera. How was Anne Francis forced to learn that life is all work? Make sure to watch this video until the end, and if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Anne Francis, Forbidden Planet's star. Anne Francis was best known for her roles in the 1950s science fiction film Forbidden Planet and the 1960s television series Honey West. She was a stunning blonde with her signature mole near her lower lip. Francis learned at quite a young age that life is all about work. She soon became a professional child magazine model, working to help her family survive the Great Depression. But she wasn't destined to settle for less. She grew into a woman with competent acting skills and a love of the cameras that loved her right back. She grabbed the attention of audiences with her sensual on-screen performances, especially during 1950s films that founded her career and secured her fame. The Golden Globe and Emmy Award-winning actress was also the first single woman to adopt a child. Anne Lloyd Francis was born in Ossining, New York on 16 September 1930. She was the only child of Philip and Edith Francis. She attended New York's Professional Children's School. She was one of those few actresses who started their career at quite a young age. Isn't it pretty impressive that she developed a sixth sense of responsibility to support her family at the mere age of 6? Yes, you heard it right. She was hardly 6 years old when she decided to help her financially struggling family during the Great Depression. At that time, she started working as a John Robert Powers model. In 1997, while talking about her arrival in the industry, she said, "I didn't come from a show business family. Neither of my parents was involved in it. Actually, someone said to my mom that they thought I'd make a good child model, so she took me up to the John Robert Powers Modeling Agency, which was the top one in New York City at that time. We were sitting in the outer office with a lot of other folks, and Mr. Powers himself came out his office door, looked around the corner, pointed at me and said, 'I'll take that one.' And that's how it all started when I was just 6 years old." At the age of 11, she began performing on children's radio before moving on to Broadway. In the Kurt Weill musical Lady in the Dark, she played Anne Bracken with Gertrude Lawrence and Danny Kaye in 1941. She went on to appear in other radio soap operas before signing a one-year contract with MGM. Though she performed wonderfully in so many movies and TV series, the roles for which she is now best remembered are Altera Morbius in the science fiction film Forbidden Planet and the female private detective in the television series Honey West. She holds the recognition of featuring in the first TV series with a woman detective character's middle name in the title. She started up her movie career at MGM in 1947 and made her film debut in This Time for Keeps in 1947. Early in her career, she didn't get any big roles, but she went on to act with some of the biggest male stars of that era. It was not until 1950 that she was given her chance to act in the United Artists production So Young, So Bad. Although the latter half of the title was also applicable to the latter half of the story of delinquent girls in an autocratic reform school, Francis was outstanding as an abused teenage mother, dreaming after the Humane Doctor performed by Paul Henreid. Francis was hired to a 20th Century Fox contract after her performance caught the attention of studio head Daryl F. Zanuck. Two lightweight comedies in which she portrayed the daughter of Prissy Clifton Webb, Elopement in 1951 and Dreamboat in 1952, were among her 5 films for Fox before she was given more maturity and period dress as a landowner in 19th century Haiti in the title part of Lydia Bailey in 1952. But soon after, she returned to MGM. After all, MGM was the studio where she was featured in a range of some good movies with a range of good roles. Eventually, it strengthened her reputation, derived from Forbidden Planet, of an innocent, doll-like performer. In 1954, she played the drunken, discarded moll of a gangster played by George Raft in Rogue Cop. After playing some supporting roles in various movies like Susan Slept Here and Bad Day at Black Rock, she finally earned a leading role in 1955. It was her first leading role that came in the 1955 movie Blackboard Jungle, which paved the way for her best-known movie, part of Altera Morbius in the Oscar-nominated sci-fi classic Forbidden Planet the next year. We can see her stunning performance in the diverse roles she performed, including her part of Blackboard Jungle. In that movie, she played the pregnant wife of a loyal teacher played by Glenn Ford, who is the victim of threatening notes and phone calls from a student. Though the picture is best known for being the first with a rock and roll soundtrack by Bill Haley and the Comets, it was a strong performance among many of her works. She was even more outstanding as Paul Newman's war widow sister-in-law in The Rack, and later in The Hired Gun, she is sentenced to death, unusually for a woman in a western, for the murder of her husband. But it wasn't long before she disappeared for several years into television, where she remained successful. However, she didn't quit the big screen and re-emerged more gracefully in the 1960s to remind audiences that she was still around. Later, at one point, she talked about her decision to do television and explained, "I had reached the end of my rope as a contract player at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. They were always looking for a new face, so I thought, forget it. I want to go back and do television." In those days, that was the death knell for an actor. You worked on television, you didn't do the film. Of course, they cross over all the time today. Anne Francis, with blonde hair and a prominent beauty mark near her lower lip, appeared in some of the most popular films of the 1950s and had a huge list of TV performances, but Forbidden Planet and Honey West made her reputation. In Forbidden Planet, a science fiction retelling of Shakespeare's Tempest, a group of space travelers, including Leslie Nielsen, visited a planet where an expatriate scientist played by Walter Pidgeon, his daughter played by Anne Francis, and a robot named Robbie had created a settlement. Before filming proceeded, the actors held a meeting and agreed to be as serious about this film as we could be. Anne Francis talked about it in a 1999 interview and said, "We could have hammed it up, but we wanted to be as sincere as we could." And indeed, she did justice to the character, making it her great achievement. If you want to see the most alluring private detective, watch Honey West, where Anne Francis had her career-defining role that broke down gender barriers. In Honey West, 1965 to 66, she appeared as a charming private detective, aided by John Erickson, who had played her weak brother in Bad Day at Black Rock. Francis's alluring beauty and the curvaceous image were well highlighted in Honey West, on which she was billed as a private Eiffel. This character was initially introduced on the ABC series Burke's Law, and then spun off as a series. Anne Francis had been honored as the first actress to appear in a TV series with a female detective's name in the title. The role won her a Golden Globe, and she was nominated for an Emmy. Although Honey West only lasted one season of 30 episodes during 1965 and 1966 on ABC, Francis rendered a sizzling impression in her sensual attire and athletic moves. In that pre-feminist time, her karate kicks were in step with the leading female detective at the time, Emma Peel of The Avengers. Anne Francis once recalled, "A lot of people speak to me about Honey West. The character made young women think there was more they could reach for. It encouraged a lot of people. And it really did encourage a lot of actresses to follow her path." Unlike her career, Anne Francis didn't relish her married life much. The actress had 2 early failed marriages. Her first husband was the United States Air Force pilot Bamlett Lawrence Price Jr. They got married on May 17, 1952, and unfortunately divorced in 1955. She later married a Beverly Hills dentist, Dr. Robert David Abeloff, in 1960. She and her second husband welcomed their daughter, Jane Elizabeth Abeloff, on March 2 years later. Unfortunately, that didn't last either, and she divorced him 4 years later. Francis never remarried after divorcing Abeloff. Later in 1970, she adopted one daughter, Margaret Maggie West. During those days, that was not a common practice. In fact, she was the first single mother in California to be granted the adoption. Throughout the 1960s, she played diverse roles. In 1960, she appeared as a high-priced call girl in Girl of the Night and stunned the audiences with her bold and beautiful performance. In 1965, she had a leading role in William Conrad's film noir Brainstorm. Later, in 1968, she played the role of Georgia James in the feature film Funny Girl. And in the following year, she played Nancy Ingersoll, the wife of Jerry Lewis's character in the comedy Hook, Line, and Sinker. She also co-starred in Impasse, an adventure film featuring Burt Reynolds. In the later decades, she performed in some movies with her limited film credits including The Love God, Pancho Villa, Born Again, Return, A Case of Passion, and The 00 Kid. Alongside film, Francis found huge success in television, and during a career that prolonged for more than 5 decades, her guest star credits were voluminous. She was a frequent guest star in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s made-for-TV, movies, and series programs. She appeared as a guest on The Untouchables, The Doreen Maney Story, and appeared twice in The Twilight Zone. She was also guest starred in 2 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents and 3 episodes of The Alfred Hitchcock Hour. Anne Francis also appeared in 2 episodes of the Western series The Virginian and in the episode Incident of the Shambling Man on the CBS Western Rawhide. She was cast in an episode of Gene Kelly's drama series Going My Way, based on the 1944 film of the same name. During 1964, she guest starred in 2 episodes, Hideout and Rachel's Mother, of The Reporter, and made 2 successive appearances in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. In 1965, Francis was cast as Honey West, a sensual private detective who drove a Cobra and had a pet ocelot. In 1967, she made a guest appearance in an episode of The Fugitive. She appeared in the 1967 episode The Saucer in The Invaders. She also guest starred in a 1973 episode, Murder in the Doll's House, of Barnaby Jones. In 1971, at the beginning of the final season of My Three Sons, Anne Francis played bowling alley waitress Terry Dowling, who married character Laird Fergus McBain Douglas of Scythian Bridge, Scotland, and returned to his homeland as royalty. In this 4-part story arc, Fred McMurray played the dual character parts of Steve Douglas and Fergus McBain Douglas. She appeared twice as a guest star in Columbo. For the first time, it was the role of casual lover of the murderer in Short Fuse, and the second time, she played the actual murder victim in A Stitch in Crime. She came across as Ida, the madame of a bawdy house on the series Kung Fu in the episode Night of the Owls, Day of the Doves in 1974. Then she played Lola Flynn in an episode of Wonder Woman titled Beauty on Parade. Beautifully immersing into the characters one after another, the girl who once portrayed a bold character in Girl of the Night played Lieutenant Commander Gladys Hope. It was the role of the head nurse in 2 episodes of World War II series Baba Black Sheep. In 1978, she appeared as Melissa Osborne in the episode How Do I Kill Thee of the Eddie Capra Mysteries. Anne Francis also had a continual role as Arliss Cooper, the mother of Mitch and Afton Cooper during the 1980-81 season of Dallas. Later, in the first few episodes of TV detective series Riptide that was aired in 1984, she played Mama Joe. Matlock and The Golden Girls were also noticeable in her successful career on television. In 1989 and 1990, she guest starred in 4 episodes of Angela Lansbury's Murder, She Wrote, credited as Anne Lloyd Francis. She appeared in the Wings episode The Lady Vanishes as Vera, who was a 1940s gun mall-type character. She also appeared as a guest star on The Drew Carey Show as the mother of Drew's girlfriend Nikki in the episode Nikki's Parents and Nikki's Wedding. She is indeed one of those 1950s stardoms who earned such an insane number of guest star credits. Finally, after a huge number of guest appearances and television performances, Anne Francis performed for the last time on television in 2004. That last acting role of Francis was in Shadows, an episode of Without a Trace. In 1982, she published her autobiography Voices from Home, subtitled An Inner Journey. On its back cover, she wrote that the book is my spiritual exposé. It's about our essence of being, the inner workings of mind and spirit which contribute to the growth of the invisible and most important part of us. That book exposed her belief in mysticism and psychic phenomena. She was a brittle enlightenment seeker of a uniquely SoCal stripe. There were her connections with obscure metaphysical churches and forays into motivational speaking. There is another fact that very few people know, is that a firm believer of mysticism was not just a sensational star of the 1950s, but she was also a pilot. Anne Francis began studying flying during the latter half of the 1960s and received her pilot certificate soon after. And ultimately, one of the most charming America's actresses of the 1960s ended up being diagnosed with lung cancer in 2007. She kept her followers informed of her improvement on her website. Though she was not fortunate enough in her marriages, her 2 daughters and 1 grandchild remained by her side until the last days of her life. Finally, the most alluring private detective ever died at the age of 80 from complications of pancreatic cancer at a retirement home in Santa Barbara, California on January 2, 2011. She was cremated after death, and her ashes were scattered at sea, but her name will remain alive forever as screen stardom. Thank you for watching the video till the end. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Until then, stay tuned.